when I went to my first event in Oahu, which was actually my first fighting game local ever. I showed up, and that first day I met someone else, and that person was just like, "Hey, I have a gathering at my house tomorrow. You want to just come?" And I was like, "Wow, that's crazy." And I literally just met you, but sure. And then ever since then, I've been coming out to everything.
I look at people who play certain games and they get really, really good at it. And the unfortunate thing is, it's hard to travel. Wang was really good at Third Strike. I mean, I've seen amazing players come out from Hawaii, especially back in the day. They were so good at the game. I've noticed that, these people probably would be able to contend with, people who play in the mainland. It's just, they live in Hawaii, and online is definitely not conducive to that distance.
The local culture definitely plays a major part of this, because like a lot of the participants that come down and stuff actually become our lifelong friends and our lifelong fans. I think because everybody's so welcoming and willing to teach each other to be better in a fighting game, we just ended up being lifelong friends. I mean, outside of tournaments, we would actually hang out, go grab something to eat, do some kind of small party or an event at somebody's house. Because, and it kind of makes them feel kind of like the cool kids because they're invited to, what we do.
Hi, wherever you are in the world. My name is Kayla, and for the past 3 years, up until this time of filming, I have been involved deeply with the fighting game communities of the world. Having been a local of Hawaii for most of my life, I found myself first getting involved in the local fighting game scene on island after the pandemic began. The quest to get good at fighting games led me down a path of both learning more about the inner workings of the community, as well as more about the unique position of Hawaii's local community, and how it's situated in a place where you have some of the strongest players in some of the most iconic games, but at the same time, a place that remains a hidden gem of the Pacific. As a player, a spectator, a commentator, and an assistant TO of the community, I wanted to try and bring a new perspective to the discourse on game communities with my own experience and the voices of members of the community. First, let's talk a little bit about the subgenres of fighting games to better establish what the focus of the documentary is on. When one imagines a fighting game, the image that likely pops up into someone's mind are titles such as platform fighters like Super Smash Bros. And traditional fighters like Street Fighter. For this piece, I will be focusing on the Hawaii local community centered around traditional fighting games like Tekken, rather than platform fighters like the Super Smash Bros. Series, as the two subgenres of fighting games in Hawaii have been separate entities for a very, very long time. Next, I would like to introduce what an FGC or a fighting game community is. A fighting game community is simply a collection of people who enjoy playing fighting games, mostly at a competitive level or semi-competitive level. This is one of the many different types of groups of gaming communities, but what makes this group so distinct from many others are two things. The first is that this group has traditionally and continues to run their events mostly offline. This means that players meet up in a physical location and play games there. This gives a few advantages, the main one being that the setups are quite simple. You do not need to have a wired or wireless connection to have games with most people, unlike most other games such as League of Legends, Valorant, etc. The other is that on almost every level until recently, the community has been grassroots, which means that everything was built from the ground up and run by ordinary people rather than by large companies or interest groups, and has remained mostly free from these large companies or interest groups. With that out of the way, what is the aim of this short documentary? As I mentioned earlier, Hawaii is this hidden gem in the Pacific with a dense but also small community of players. But most of the world isn't aware of the scene here, like with other communities in mainland America. My first hope is that I can bring some of this secluded Hawaii FGC to the world from the eyes of someone who participated in the scene on many different levels. The second is to show how the community is run and how the community differs from their mainland counterparts. While most communities on the mainland are structured similarly, the Hawaii FGC stands out from them due to smaller numbers and an isolated location in the Pacific Ocean. The lack of robust online play capabilities and inability to easily travel to any state has even further isolated the community from other communities on the mainland until recently. Due to this phenomenon, this has created a community which is much tighter knit across all subgenres of traditional fighting games, and has also created an environment which encourages welcoming all players due to the need to expand and to diversify playstyles, games, character experience, and personalities. Finally, I would like to highlight some challenges the community faced and is currently facing now, and show how it developed and where the future of the community might lie in this current transitional period. With that, I hope you enjoy this feature, and let's get right into it. Where does the history of these communities start? That can all be traced back to the video game arcades. While arcades in America were in a slump in the late 1980s, and at the start of the 1990s, the arcades got a renaissance that started with the release of Street Fighter II: The World Warrior in 1991. According to sources, this version of Capcom's Street Fighter and the Championship Edition, which was released in 1992, was able to sell 25,000 cabinets in just the US alone. Other fighting games would also subsequently start releasing in arcades, such as Midway's Mortal Kombat in 1992, Sega's Virtua Fighter in 1993, and Namco's Tekken in 1994. These widespread releases led to larger cities having fighting game dedicated arcades. One of the most famous examples of this is New York's Chinatown Fair Arcade. In Hawaii, many family-friendly fun centers, as well as other recreational and non-recreational spaces, would bring in these cabinets to try and build more business. People of all ages would crowd around these machines, trying to see how far they could get on a single quarter. Sometimes, bonds that would last a lifetime would be formed over these machines. However, it wasn't uncommon to see fights break out either. As tournament organizer and Video Gamers Hawaii founder Uncle Keith recalls,
people would actually start yelling at each other and bullying each other, like in Fun Factory and stuff, just to like hog the arcade machine. I did hear stories in the mainland FGC and stuff, like knives were shown, people were threatening each other with fucking pistols. I was like, whoa, what the fuck, dude? That kind of stuff when I heard it.
As people amassed in these locations, small communities would be formed, as well as identities that were often based on region and local arcade. On island, some examples would be the aforementioned Fun Factory group that would frequent Pearl Ridge, and the Hawaiian Bryan group. Often, these groups would raid each other's territories to challenge the community there, and try to determine who was the best. This was also happening on the mainland too, and this would breed major events, also known as majors. Some of the most popular events of the 2000s, like Battle by the Bay, later rebranded to EVO, are still alive and in motion. However, this golden age of fighting game arcade communities would not last in America. The final nail in the coffin for many of these communities would be the rise of the home console market, paired with the decline of arcade machines and arcade releases for fighting games. However, these communities based around these games would persist. Many would find new homes in barcade environments, or other places which had arcade machines to add to the function of the space. Others would use home consoles to their advantage, and set up spaces for these newly orphaned community members to continue their quest for glory. This brings us to the start of Hawaii Video Gamer League, or HVGL. Founded by Jeff Young Sr. and Jeff Young Jr., they would have humble beginnings with their turkey tourney in a church. In the meanwhile, Rayblade X, who had recently moved from Oregon back to his birth state of Hawaii, and James Wang, a local player who had recently returned from his education in the mainland, would meet and start to run events as well. They would eventually wind up running events at the Nocturnal Lounge, a bar that also allowed space for gamers to have offline sessions. Other locations like the gym and cafe.gg would appear, and events would also be run there. At this time, Uncle Keith would be a member participating with HVGL. This would eventually bring him to meet with Rayblade X and Yokiman64, also known as Lucas, and together they would be the catalyst for the now modern 808 FGC group. Uncle Keith would also found Video Gamers Hawaii, which originally started as a Destiny-centered group, but now is focused on the current local Hawaii FGC activity. As Uncle Keith recalls,
This is actually how it started. Like, I wanted to make an impression at the time with the 808 FGC, right? And, you know, like, they were running Ultra Street Fighter 4, and I think it was Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 at the time. You know, like, I wanted to be a part of it. Yeah, he actually allowed it. I was actually part of the Nocturna event. So, and here's the story goes, man. This is where I kind of, like, cut ties with HVGL. Of course, you know, like, my boy, Russell, I told him, can I borrow like about a few monitors for the Nocturna event? And you know, and he said yeah, right? Fast forwarding it until the event came, I was already there with like about my consoles and the games that I was gonna run. And I told him, all right, man, where you at, dude? And then Russell voice changed, and he told me this that dude, I can't come over there. Jeff Senior, he won't lend the monitors unless if it's an HVGL event. After that, I was like, all right, it's whatever. So I actually scrambled through my phone just to see who was coming for the tournament, right? Who was participating. So, you know, like I actually gave my friends a call. I told them this, all right, man, if you guys are gonna come to the tournament, I will pay for your fucking entry, and I will pay for whatever thing you got in the bar. And Lord and behold, dude, they actually pulled through. And they actually brought monitors that I needed in order to play. So because of that, I never really got along with the Youngs after that. HVGL kind of left a bad taste in my mouth after that thing. I was like, all right, you know what, dude? I'm just gonna start my own shit, and I'm just gonna like do it on my own. I got together with Ray, which I met at an HVGL event. Then later on, I met up with Luke. I think I met him like through like a house event. And we started talking at it was a time where Kyle Hebert showed up. Yeah, Kyle Hebert, the voice of Ryu and Gohan in the American dub. And you know, we started like talking about equipment and stuff. So you know, we just got together and say what we were gonna do and stuff, and that's how we actually met. You know what I mean? Because you know, like this was way before Tekken 7 started and stuff, and we didn't really want to step into toes, right? It was, you know, like out of respect. First off, we actually did things at Frankie Fresh, which closed down, by the way. I missed their milkshakes. We did like free gaming get-togethers. I think we were doing like Injustice 2, and some other old fighting games that people weren't really into and stuff like that, right? And after that, I think Ray actually introduced me to Blaine. And once we just started talking to Blaine, we did like get-togethers at Osuyami, right? In the beginning, it wasn't really that much because nobody were really into NRS games and stuff, and we couldn't really touch Street Fighter 5 at the time, you know, out of respect for James Wang. So we were just slowly waiting for Tekken 7 to release, and that's pretty much when we started doing like a bunch of locals right after that because of Tekken 7.
Eventually, the group that James Wang ran would merge with the 808 FGC group. That brings us to the modern age of the Hawaii FGC up until the pandemic. Beyond players and spectators, there are actually many different roles that run a community. In order to introduce some of them to you, I asked some people who worked on different roles in the community to talk a little bit about what the roles entail and how important they are to having the community run.
There's people like me. I gotta make sure that everything, like everything is well planned. Because whenever I do an event, I make sure to plan it at least 2 or 3 months before. You know, especially a major event. Sometimes shit can go wrong. So you know, like I also have like second opinions from Ray and the rest of the guys that are involved just to see what we could do better. Of course, you know, there's also tournament organizers or TOs or scorekeepers like Alera. I do it myself every time to time. It's really stressful for them because you know, like they're trying to make sure that you know, like everything is in place and make sure that the scores are correct and stuff like that, right? Because you know, like there were some players that actually lied about their scores, bro. and that shit is irritating. Don't do that. And there's also, equipment. Lucas and Ray was actually really good in doing that and stuff like that. So when it comes to like wiring, setups and stuff like that, they could, and in case if there's something that goes wrong, they would actually know how to troubleshoot the problem. Streaming, is a really big part of community now, especially with gaming. Spoon was definitely, it's definitely the stream master, probably the best streamer I know personally, bro. It's also like voluntary roles. I'm thankful for what Hoopa, Layton, and them did this year. Just to make sure that none of my crap gets jacked. Security is also a big part too, because like you can't really trust motherfuckers out nowadays.
No one person did all the work. Ray did a lot of the work. Lucas did a lot of the work. I'm going to be tooting my own horn. I also did a lot of work, but we all did work in different areas and things that we're good in. Me, I'm good at pressing the go live button on OBS and XSplit. Keith, he's good at talking to people. He's good at talking to people, networking, and social mediaing. Ray, he may not be the best person that can talk to a lot of people, but he's a man of action. He'll without saying much, he'll get things done. Lucas, he's another one. He gets around and he talks to people, especially internationally. We've had a lot of international people, Japanese people coming in, and he's pretty fluent in Japanese, so he that's how he networks with people who are visiting. And he's just another person that gets around and networks locally as well.
Rayblade X also points out the importance of venues. Events aren't possible without spaces to run them at, even if it's something small like someone's room or a garage. However, what these community leaders do is not just limited to the inner circle of the Hawaii FGC. There are many outreach events which have also taken place in the past and is currently still taking place right now. I asked Uncle Keith about some of these, and he recalls these few.
Myself and Ray, right, we actually run a toy drive for the Kapilani for women and children and stuff. And, we actually try to do a tour drive at Osayabi Bar and Grill. People come over, see if they can donate a whole bunch of toys. Every time I go there, every year, they always look forward to our gifts. They're very grateful because they're like, oh, you guys are the video game group. You guys always put a smile on these kids' faces. I was like, I'm glad. We also did 24-hour streams for pro-abortion, and we managed to raise about $200 for that event. But you could actually see us freaking dying on the stream. So we actually did a school outreach all the way in the other side of the freaking island in Laie. Me and Lucas, we actually teamed up with Devin, right, in order to do a Fortnite event, and it was ourselves. PC Gamers Hawaii, and I think the Microsoft store at the time. We actually did that event right over there.
This brought a question into mind. Without these other roles besides just players and spectators, how would the community have fared? I posed this question to Uncle Keith, and he gave me this response.
In order for the players to shine, it's also, us are the guys that actually provide equipment. There can't be an event without equipment. Speaking of Daigo Yumehara and Justin Wong, there wouldn't be an Evil Movement 37 without without the guys that was trying to run it. And and a lot of the stuff that we do personally comes out of our own pocket. On a good day, it would be great if we actually would come out even. But majority of the time, pretty much 99% of the time, we lose money, and that's okay. This is just us trying to run an event and make sure that everybody has a good time.
One thing that's always interested me, as someone who's been a local of the community, is how the local culture of Hawaii and the community intersect. I took this opportunity to ask the people who I interviewed what they thought of this. One thing that people pointed out, and something that is mentioned often when talking about local contemporary culture, is the aloha spirit, or this idea of being welcoming to all. As some of them put it,
it's kind of one of the first things you notice when you come out here. You're just walking on the street, people say hi to you, people greet you, wave at you, very nice. You feel like you could talk to a lot of people, and everywhere on this island.
Hawaii tends to have like a lot more friendlier communities. Kind of encourage you to just kind of like strike up random conversations with people you never met, and you can get like a lot of interesting stories from doing that, because our I guess our island is not as large. The scene isn't as large compared to like the mainland and so on. It feels like we kind of have to like try to cherish as much visitors or as much members as we can, just because like of how small our scene is. We don't exactly have the, I guess, like the rights to have like these like large venues and whatnot. So that's why when you look at the Hawaii scene, one of the more interesting things you'll notice is a lot of the hostings and stuff are kind of just held at like people's houses. It's like very grassroots.
I heard some stories about the mainland FGCs that weren't as welcoming as us, right? Because like they would actually, like if you weren't like a good enough player, they would fucking ignore you. That kind of stuff. Us, we're like, yo, dude, nice try. Want to go to the bar and take a shot? Right? And we just become friends from there.
Another element of local culture in Hawaii is the food culture. Due to many ethnic backgrounds being in Hawaii, many of their foods have also made its way onto the islands and has intermingled in between each other. As some of the members state,
of course, there's like the crazy like food culture here, since we have like so much ethnicities.
Hawaii is such a wonderful place, man. I mean, like, there's a reason why they call Hawaii the melting pot of the Pacific, right? You have the best of Asia and best of Western America, all combined into one. There's a lot of food porn moments in Hawaii, bro. A lot of amazing fusions. I mean, like the bira ramen. Yeah, dude, that's fucking cool.
this food culture also plays a big part within our own local community for fighting games. As Spoon recalls,
especially here in Hawaii, food is definitely something that helps take the edge off, alongside alcohol, obviously. But it kind of helps break the ice.
However, although this culture is a local culture on Hawaii, this does not mean that foreigners or outsiders are excluded from this culture.
There's definitely people here that have not been born here or have not been raised here, but they slowly become ingrained in the culture. They slowly start to understand and start to adopt it for themselves. Almason's one of them. He is one of the people that have traveled around a lot, lived different places growing up. He spent most of his time here in Hawaii. He understands the culture here, and he helps contribute to the culture. Yeah, Leopard is another one. He's not originally from here, but he's already become ingrained with the culture.
But how does this culture play into our setting of the FGC? As Spoon puts it, but how does this culture play into our setting of the FGC? As Spoon puts it,
yeah, I would say a lot of how people are at events are 100%, the Hawaii culture and their upbringing here. At the end of the day, when the tournament's over, we're all gonna be coming together, drinking, and eating, laughing, having a good time with each other. But that also, I believe, is part of the Hawaii culture. We're enemies during the tournament, friends, when it's over.
This brought up a question to mind. How do participants within the community see relationships between them and other people, as well as other relationships between the other participants within the community? I posed this question to some of the people that I interviewed, and these are the responses.
But I would definitely say that like a lot of the relations that I have with people here are kind of like a brotherly type of thing. There's a lot of people like actually genuinely go out of their way to like check up on me and like make sure like everything's going all right and stuff like that. And actually that's like super nice.
For Rusty, it's really an interesting relationship.
Oh, bro, it's like a coin flip, dog. It's a love-hate relationship out here. I was like, well, not in a negative way, but it's like more in a comedic way. I was like, one day I'll be a hero, the other day I'll be a villain. At least that's how it feels like. When I wasn't too well known at the time, I was kind of seen like as a hero in a sense. But ever since like people started getting more familiar with my status, then I started transitioning more to a villain role, and it kind of just flip flops depending on like how how monkey I play. My relationship outside of the games is kind of just like it's kind of like a me and the boys moment. We're just out here chilling. We'll get some food. We'll talk story. Kind of like how a bunch of uncles do it, like in front of like their house. Instead of in front of their house, we go to like a restaurant or like whatever like meetup there is. Pretty much a friendly atmosphere out here.
A lot of people here, in fact, almost nearly everybody here was born and raised here in Hawaii. So we all know how to treat each other. You know, a lot of it is just our general upbringing.
I would describe it like you're all lifelong friends. Right, whether you've been in the community for a year, 20 years, like some of the older guys, for a good amount of your lives, you guys can always just chat with each other. And you guys will always be there for each other.
But what about the relationship between competitors, participants, and space? I asked this question to a few of these interviewees, and this was their response.
I definitely think environment plays a part. So Osayami, you know, it's a bar restaurant. It's a place where, you know, usually bar restaurants are generally known for hangout spots, I guess. Hangout spots and making friends. You'll occasionally see arcade cabinets or darts or pool tables or whatever, you know, at bars and restaurants. And that's the general feel of a place like Osayami is definitely a lot more casual. Yeah, of course, we did have our competitive and hype moments there at Osayami. You know, there's no forgetting that.
Well, looks like he tried to go for the side switch.
This is the third round in a row that Chris has Rock in the corner.
Yeah. Damn, the audience is going ham right now.
Oh, yeah. Here's a good match.
Compared to something like HPU Esports Arena, because HPU Esports Arena, the setting is more focused on, you know, on the gaming aspect of things.
With Uncle Keith being one of the main venue coordinators up until this point, I asked him what his process was when it comes to creating and choosing these venues. This is his response.
I mean, as long as a place actually serves food, then, because everybody loves food, right? Then yeah, I would definitely host an event there, dude. Because here's the thing, there were like places people wanted me to check out and do, which I did. But you know, and I kind of look at it, I was like, so, you want me to host in this and that area? Is there like any nearby food establishments or someplace where we can actually buy drinks, or do we actually have to bring food to this thing? It kind of sucked. If I'm gonna set up and stuff like that, I want to find a place to eat. All of us in the FGC, no, people in general in Hawaii, we just love food, dude. You know, even if you don't play, or even if you play competitively, it doesn't matter what game you play. We're all connected by how good the food is over here.
With all this in mind, how does our local community on island compare to communities on the mainland? I asked a few people who either came from the mainland or had experience with the FGC in the mainland, and they gave me their responses.
Comparatively to like here in California, I came back for the summer and I was like, okay, I kind of need to do some fighting game stuff because I'm kind of bored. And I went out to a local, and man, nobody's like as close as like everybody is in Hawaii. Like in Hawaii, like everybody in the scene just like knows each other, right? Like that. You go to the event, you talk to like one or two people maybe, and then like you're kind of just done. Just not too many people will just like come up to you and be like, wow, like a new person. It's really interesting how it's done over here because obviously Oahu is like, and in the Hawaiian Islands in general, like it's small enough, right? Where like encapsulate everybody into one server in a sense, to talk about things. But I noticed that it's really hard to find people who want to play the same game as you over here, especially because of like how big California is in general, right? At the first level, you have it split into like Northern California and Southern California, right? for the communities, and then second, you have it by like type of game, like you're saying, like the anime fighting games, the traditional 2D, 3D fighting games, right? But I actually noticed that specifically where I live, which is Northern California, there's a lot more of a crowd for like the anime fighting games. But even in the anime server, cause like it's just split up by like games, right? And so you end up kind of like fracturing the community even more. So then I'd say like the actual pool of people that I've had exposure to, which are the Guilty Gear people, is I would say actually roughly around the same size as probably our community on Oahu. Because there are a lot of people. Because I remember going over to like one of the local tournaments over here. It was like 30 something entrants. I would say is like probably about how many people you'd have come to maybe like a spoon gathering or something. So even like a niche game like that has like so many people coming out. Like I can't even imagine what the Strive tournaments are like.
So, you know, I've been to a couple Usuyami events down in Hawaii. One thing I've noticed in particular, it's kind of changed over the years in Seattle. You know, a big difference I noticed is that a lot of the fighting game communities congregate in one event. And in Seattle, it kind of depends on the event, but for the most part, when we did tournaments in Seattle, it was very focused on one genre. And you know, going to Hawaii, one thing I noticed, and I've talked to quite a bit of people about this, is you know, there's not a lot of monthly events, and logistically, it's kind of impossible to run it down there because there's no venues, right? It's very hard to get a venue down there, and that's just kind of a thing in Hawaii. You know, it's space is a commodity. But when I go to an Usuyami event, you know, everyone meets at a bar. That's very similar to Hawaii or to Seattle. You know, for the most part, the scenes are pretty different just because of the amount of people that are in it as well.
I was also interested in some of the modern issues that the fighting game community was facing both before as well as after the pandemic. Obviously, one of the bigger issues with an offline-based community during the pandemic is that people couldn't gather together in the same space anymore. So, I asked Spoon, one of the first online tournament hosters, about his experience with hosting online tournaments and that process. As he recounts,
when it came to running online tournaments, it was something that I didn't immediately think of until like maybe I watched like maybe 2 or 3 weeks of online tournaments before it finally clicked with me. I'm like, oh, you know, we could be doing this too, because there's no way we can do locals. So I pitched the idea to the VGH crew. You know, I'm not gonna throw them under the bus because, you know, some of them were hesitant at first. Some of them didn't even immediately jump on the idea of the Discord servers, but you know, it took them a while to really accept the idea of the Discord server and the idea of online tournaments. Rather than trying to waste time trying to explain to them, I decided I'm just gonna do it. And luckily for me, I had support from Lambeck. Things would not be the way they are without him. Okay, he was one of the first people to come to me and say, I want to help you. And thankfully, because of that, I got the confidence that I needed to run the server, to run online tournaments. It was a lot of trial and error. It was definitely a lot of trial and error before I finally figured out a format of how I wanted to do things.
but what effect did these online tournaments have? I asked Spoon this, and as he put it,
As far as helping the community, I definitely think it helped the community. It definitely brought more awareness to the greater community as a whole, because since then, so many people have joined the server, so many that I've lost track, but a good majority of them have stuck around since then. I mostly created it as an outlet for the people that came out locally a lot and entered the local tournaments. You know, that was their way of hanging out and expressing themselves through tournament play, because, you know, by nature, a lot of us are, you know, secretly competitive with each other. We want to talk spit to each other, basically. the tournament would the online tournaments would bring people in, but then because of the Hawaii culture, it was the reason for a lot of them to stay. Majority of the people in our community are from Oahu, but even though we might tease other people from being on a different island and stuff, I still value them just as much as somebody that lives on the same island as me, just because we're from the same state. I know doing it weekly took a lot out of me. The burnout wasn't nearly as strong as if it was done offline. Online is easier because we just come home, sit down, turn on our computer, plug in the controller, and we're good to go. But I definitely noticed that at some point it became more of a chore for others.
Post-pandemic as well, there were a lot of issues really getting everyone back into the flow of things, and there still are these issues that remain now. I asked Uncle Keith a little bit about the pandemic and post-pandemic situation for offline locals, and he responded with this.
Yeah, I mean, that entire process has been great. I mean, it felt kind of weird to me, at first, I would actually be, of course, at home, trying to record scores, bother you guys, saying, all right, stand by, you're going to be on stream next. I actually, missed the feeling of, telling people, tapping them on the shoulders, I'd be like, yo, dude, you're going to be next, stand by on main stage. And going into online, typing it out, saying, hey, where you at? Your match is next. Dude, don't make me video call you. But other than that, I'm glad Spoon actually got the whole 808 FGC thing going online, because at the time I kind of had anxiety at the time, right? Trying to think what's going to be the next move, But because, as I said, Spoon stepped up in order to take care of that, so I volunteered and I told him, dude, if you need any help, I'll do whatever I can. If you need a TO, I got you.
With the post-pandemic shift, though, Uncle Keith notes that there has been a few hiccups with that.
A lot of the guys that actually used to come out just don't really come out anymore due to personal reasons, like either a job or they just had a kid, trying to do family stuff, right? And also this too, why leave my home if I could just play a game over here?
Another issue the community faces, and has always faced for the longest time, is its isolated location in the Pacific. Because it's so far away from the nearest state, California, online net play has always been an issue. Representation in major events as well has also been an issue for the community, and because of that, it often goes overlooked by many people. As Samuel puts it,
when you're in Hawaii, you don't get to travel too much anymore, because it is an insane journey to get from Hawaii to really anywhere. I mean, even from Hawaii to Vegas is 6 hours, which not a lot of people want to do just for a single weekend. Whereas, when you're in the mainland, my flight from Seattle was 2.5 hours. Actually, the flight itself was only 2 hours. So, it makes traveling way easier. I mean, I've seen amazing players come out from Hawaii, Marvel 2 in particular. I've noticed that, these people probably would be able to contend with, people who play in the mainland. It's just, they live in Hawaii, and online is definitely not conducive to that distance. Marvel 2 in particular, Marvel 2 is not really built for rollback, but it has rollback. It's playable. I play Mystery and Marvel 2 all the time on Fightcade, and we don't enjoy it, but it's a way to play the game. And the unfortunate thing is, it's hard to travel.
With that in mind though, games are starting to get better netcode so that online play is more conducive to the distance. Especially during the coronavirus pandemic, when everyone had to play online, developers were really pushed to start to make these changes with their game. Even with this improvement in net play, the Hawaii scene is still often overlooked for another huge reason, which is its own time zone. Because the Hawaii time zone is so far away from other time zones, oftentimes the time when Hawaii players can play is too late for many other players in the mainland. One way that Hawaii players try to combat this is to host a room every year at EVO when everyone goes together. This room is called the Hawaii Suite. The objective of this suite is to bring the best players from the East and the West together in one place, and be the bridge between these two different cultures. By doing this, we leverage Hawaii's unique position as being the middle of the Pacific, a bridge between the East and the West, and also by bringing these players together, putting our own names out there as well. This year, I was lucky enough to be able to participate in the suite, and having been there and having seen the environment, I can say that it does indeed achieve this goal. However, with it being post-pandemic, there were already a few issues with this year's suite. The first was many people who used to go to the suite didn't come back this year, and probably won't be back until next year. Even with this in mind though, there were still many players there, and another issue became whether or not we had enough space. This year, like many other years, we rented out one big suite for everyone to stay in, but because of the numbers that we had, and because we anticipate more people to come back next year, it looks like the Hawaii group is trying to rent out the entire wing of the Delano in the suite area. Yet another issue, and one that really can't be helped, is the fact that this suite is an invite-only suite. So sometimes we will get people who will just wind up in the suite from invites from other players from other places, but for the most part, the suite is invite-only based off of people who the locals know. So the issue is that sometimes you only really get people who already know about the scene, and won't be able to proliferate the scene and its name as far as it could possibly go. However, the other side to this is that having it be open invite would mean that oftentimes it would get too chaotic, and likely people would not have the respect to allow the suite to keep running the way that it does. Again, with space also having been an issue this year, as well as other years having other issues such as people disrespecting the use of the space, such as puking in the bathroom, getting too drunk, etc., means that this inevitably will likely be a rule that stays in place in order to make sure that everything is maintained properly and that things are manageable for the Hawaii people. One thing that's been happening a lot post-pandemic is that new venues have been popping up. Of course, Osayami is still in full swing at the current moment when Uncle Keith plans it, but other events such as spoon gatherings, gatherings at Rusty's house, HPU Esports Arena, etc. have also been popping up. I asked Spoon about one of the bigger ones, the gatherings that he has at his places, and he recounts the way that it started.
Yeah, it's funny how that whole thing started. It was around spring last year, or spring earlier this year, excuse me, that somebody, came into our Discord server and mentioned how they were going to be in the area, and they was wondering if there was any events going on. And at the time, there wasn't too many events going on because, well, the pandemic wasn't nearly as strong, and rules weren't nearly as strict. Events were still pretty sparse, and we still had to go around wearing our masks and whatnot. So that's why I kind of had the idea, even though it was kind of last minute. Yeah, if we're going to host something, if we're not going to be able to host it at Osayami, then I'll just host it at my house. So that's why I started going around to whoever I trusted, whoever I regularly chat with. I told him, listen, I'm going to be holding something at my house this Friday. He's like, do you think you can make it out? Are you going to make it? Are you going to make it? Or, can you make this? So, I did my best to actually create an event for this visitor to go to. And, luckily I'm on good terms a lot with, quite a few people. So they were down to come out, even though it was kind of last minute. And even though the visitor couldn't make it out, which is fine. The visitor couldn't make it out, but even if he couldn't make it out, we still got a gathering going on at my place. We're all hanging out, we're all playing games with each other. It's like I saw it as like a win-win situation. Either he comes out or he doesn't. Whether he does or does not, we still got locals going on. We still got people playing. We still got people hanging out. And it was from that I kind of thought, hey, this was like, things turned out pretty good. Maybe I should try and make this more of a regular thing.
Another one of these new venues that have popped up recently is the HPU Esports Arena, or Hawaii Pacific University Esports Arena. This arena is run in part by Kreb, and although this arena itself isn't dedicated to fighting games, this has been a space that we have used a lot and plan to use more in the future. Since Kreb is mostly in charge of the nights that we are hosting over there, I asked him about the process of getting things set up and some of the difficulties he faced with running the esports arena.
So that was also accidental. And I was a student worker for about a year before getting promoted there. And I didn't even apply for that job. I applied to go work at the IT department. The position was filled, but then they directed me towards the esports arena. When I got there, they weren't doing events. It was very limited. So I didn't really see it as anything outside of just a part-time job. But then I started meeting more people and started seeing what the place could be. It kind of drove me to keep trying at it. There's no other place like it in Hawaii where everybody could just go in. I thought about how much it meant to me to meet up with people, play video games, stuff like that. And I thought I could make something happen like that there. I think the people before myself and before my manager, they were just too tunnel visioned. I'm sure the school opened it with a certain goal in mind. The place opened in 2017, so about 5 years now. But I don't think their plan was to build anything for a community. When they initially opened, they weren't even open to the public. It was just for students. Starting this year again, 2022, we started doing events for the first time in about 3 years. Some events we do are either our regular Super Smash Bros. Tournaments for the most recent title, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. We also host what we call Fight Nights, and that's where we just provide spaces for anybody in any non-Super Smash Bros. Fighting game to just come in and play with each other next to each other. With gaming right now, online is pretty feasible for most games, but I think a lot of people appreciate being able to play and hang out with the same people in person. So that's kind of where that event came from. Just giving people an actual physical space to meet up and hang out. We also are part of events that aren't necessarily hosted or ran by us, but we just support. So once a year there's an anime convention in Hawaii called KawaiiCon, and there's a large room at the convention center where they just play video games, host tournaments, stuff like that. And this past year we actually supported in 2 out of 3 rooms. We provided our equipment, ran the tournaments, advertised the tournaments, set up, tear down. And even though it wasn't ran by us, it was ran by another group. We wanted to really just do what we can to help out. Beyond that, we just host smaller tournaments for games of about maybe 20 people, mostly PC, so Valorant, League of Legends, Overwatch are some of the ones we've hosted. And all in person. We haven't done any online tournaments this year. We're trying to really bring people back out. Right, and with this upcoming one, because it is an annual event, KawaiiCon, I'm already talking to some of the community leaders for the fighting game room and just trying to see what they need, what we can provide them. I guess, and another reason we're trying to make all these things grow is we want to do our part in trying to keep everything going, right? We don't want it to ever reach the point where there wasn't enough support, so now they're cutting whatever little support there was from it. So the way I first heard about you guys was through the Super Smash Brothers people. They have a invite link to your guys' Discord saying this is only for Smash Brothers. If you guys want to play these games, check these people out. So I was just interested to see what other communities were out there. After seeing that people were asking when in-person events were happening, so I reached out, I think just on the Discord in general, saying like, hey, I'm new at HPU. We have this stuff. Would anyone be interested in using our stuff? I was met with a lot of caution, I think, because in the past, from what the people in the community at that time told me is, it wasn't an accommodating space for fighting games. And it was almost always like a side thought whenever they went. It was more of like, oh, you guys are here, there's a PlayStation back there on the couch, go at it. And then that really just opened my eyes to how things used to be, and I thought, oh, well, like I don't want it to be that. I want it to be an actual community event. Like, let me know what we need to do. And a lot of people gave me their advice. Some people came by to see the space and told me what their initial thoughts were, and we just kind of took it from there. I think our first few weren't too successful. Maybe only 6 people, 8 people showed up, and there were a few hiccups because there's so many games. I just didn't know enough about all of them, and I think our first big one happened around August, and just seeing like 20, 30 people in there all having fun, laughing, smiling, playing the games together. People coming up to me afterwards thanking me for hosting it, that made me realize, like, yeah, this is something that I think the community needs right now, so I'm gonna keep doing my best. Out of every community I've talked to, you guys have been the most willing to help new people and bring new people in. And not just myself, but I see it whenever there's new players that come in, people giving them advice, people like coaching them through it, like letting them know what not to do, what to do. Seeing how people in the community are respectful towards everybody. It's not something you see with a large group of gamers. So that was definitely a shock, especially like respecting when someone's like younger, like a child. Like when there's kids that show interest in it, they know to clean up their language, they know not to say certain things, they know like that this, like he's a 10-year-old kid, like he's interested in this game, so let me show him this game. Like he's obviously not at my level, so let me dumb down my play and kind of help him get into this. Again, this isn't to say that the other communities aren't welcoming or aren't friendly, aren't nice, but the FGC community is definitely the most of all that.
So what lies in store next for the community? As it just so happens, we're currently in a huge transitional period because Uncle Keith, one of the pillars of our community, is planning to move away to Texas in this year around June or July. I asked many of the people who I interviewed for this and gathered some of their thoughts.
Definitely sad that's going to be happening, right? But I would say that at least the community currently is still in good hands, you know? You got people like Spoon, you got Sleepy, you got Almason, like that, right? And they're all doing great in terms of keeping the scene alive and stuff like that, and organizing events. You know, even now, since we have the HPU esports arena, right? Now we can have even more events. And so I think moving forward, you know, I think things will be still great.
The biggest person that's been influencing the scene the most at the moment, I think it might actually just be Spoon, because he's still hosting like all kinds of tournaments, and with that, it helps generate hype, and it helps generate like more interest into the games being played there. It's really hard to find people to like replace those roles, but at the moment, I think we might still be rolling to good to go, because at the moment, one of the main things that's keeping us going is the HPU venue. But while that thing is still going, yeah, we do need to like find like other figures to like help out with those roles, because as much as HPU is like popping off and like how helpful it's been, we still don't have like that presence to run like tournaments and so on like a offline scene.
With Spoon being one of the big names that popped up for the next generation, I asked him personally what his plans were from here on out.
As I live and breathe, at least for the next decade or so, I will still be very much devoted. So as long as I'm around, I'm hoping to, again, with the monthlies at HPU, that's something that we want to start, especially when Street Fighter 6 goes live. And hopefully, with HPU being a regular venue, it'll attract more. With Keith, he deserves the time off because he put in a lot of work. He laid out a very strong foundation for me to use. You know, through his work and Ray's work and Lucas's work, they were able to get something started, and they kind of made a name for themselves among certain circles in Hawaii. I personally may not be using the same name as them, Video Gamers Hawaii. Not that I have a problem with it or anything, but it's like, you know, I find it hard to continue someone else's work. Me and Almason, we both are working with Kevin at HPU. Even him, he doesn't plan, I think he plans on sticking around for another 2 years or so. And during that time, we hopefully want to get things started over there. Through that, we can hopefully, you know, get more eyes on us, and hopefully more opportunities that way will come up.
With Spoon planning to try and push the HPU esports arena events more, I asked Kreb what his thoughts on the future were as well. This is what he had to say.
My, I guess, role in the community going is just the same. Just me trying my best while I'm here to like make things happen for you guys. After seeing the success with the Street Fighter 6 fight night we had, I was already talking with people in the community about when the game launches, like to start hosting monthly tournaments there. Right, I don't plan on staying in Hawaii for the rest of my life, so other things I'm doing is I am personally growing like my own stockpile of stuff that when I leave, I intend to leave here with people. The university doesn't actually give us much funding for these fighting game events, but little by little I've been buying multiple Steam accounts that each have a license, so that even if I'm gone, even if the school doesn't support it, like we have 3 Steam accounts that can now play Guilty Gear Strive, and I plan on leaving those as well. Same with the PlayStations and whatever I end up stockpiling. For you guys, for Smash Bros. Ultimate, for Smash Bros. Melee, right, just every community. And I hope I'm gonna leave it in good hands and they'll be put to good use. My community, all my best friends, right, we were all formed from playing these games together. And we're still friends now, like 12, 13 years later. And yeah, just to be a part of that, just to help that, even if it doesn't benefit me at all, it'll be good because there'll be somebody else that benefited from it that could experience what I experienced.
Of course, with Uncle Keith leaving, it was only right for me to ask him what he thought was next of the community. When I asked him about who would step up to the plate and become the next generation, he gave me this response.
I would actually say JD Phil. He's been passionate about running locals, regardless if it's Street Fighter or Tekken, because he really wants to step up and do things. I give him all the credit in the world that he wants to do that, so he has my support 100%. I think Ray is still going to be sticking around for a while until, you know, some plans change with him. So if anything, I think it's going to be JD Phil, Ray, and probably somebody else, whoever wants to step up.
When I sent the question over to Ray Blade X, he gave me this response. If Ray really had 5 monitors and PlayStation 5s, he could single-handedly do events at Osu's. But one thing he's afraid of is that there may have to be a cap on entries, since we're on a time limit at Osayami. At the same time though, Ray acknowledges that this isn't a one-person job. Ideally, at least 5 people are needed to get events going. Ray's also been asking other people to do their own things for the past 5 years, so he's interested to see if another group pops up that isn't Spoon or HPU. Ray believes that most things will stay the same, except for venue and entry fee. At Osayami Bar and Grill, we never charge a venue fee, and only ask that players and spectators buy food and drink since it's a two-way street for many venues. While Ray doesn't plan to take a step back, he may have to if he's unable to secure enough equipment when Street Fighter 6 launches. And of course Ray, as well as many of us, will greatly miss Keith if and when he does move to Texas. For his final word, Ray Blade X wanted to share this. Support your local tournament organizers. For those in areas without an FGC, start one. Hit up a local bar/restaurant that might be interested in doing events. Put together a small group and set up events for others to join. This can start in someone's house or garage and then migrate to larger venues. If you're not sure if you have a local FGC, a search for 808 FGC or PDX FGC, Minnesota FGC, area code, airport, or city code may help. Fighting games are best enjoyed with another player.
support your scene, even if it's not related to fighting games, because they're a lot more fun, especially when you get around to like knowing the people.
You know, as Taquito once said, you know, fighting games are something so great. I don't know how long I'll be doing it for, but considering how much time I missed, I'm trying to make up for lost time. So that's why I'm, rather than trying to improve as a player, while I'm still trying to do that, my main focus is trying to improve the community, because the community was definitely something strong like more than 10 years ago. It all sped off, and now I'm trying to bring it back together again, whether it's with old people or if it's with new people. That's gonna be a still a long process. Still a long process.